Hello and welcome. Happy autumn season. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make these pumpkin spice latte themed journal dangles. They're a charming way to decorate any junk journal or scrapbook for the fall season. The printable for the project is available in my Etsy shop, so if you'd like to follow along, I'll leave the link to the shop and to the specific printable in the video description. It makes 8 journal dangles in total. Also, at the end of the video, I will show a way that you can attach these to your journal without piercing the page if that's what you prefer. So, let's begin. Here are the supplies you will be needing. You'll need the digital download printed on cardstock. You can print on regular printer paper, but cardstock is highly recommended. Scissors to cut everything out. A glue stick and a piece of scrap paper so that your work surface doesn't get glue on it. A miniature-sized hole puncher. The one I'm using punches a hole that is 1.5 millimeters in diameter, but if you don't have one of these, using a sharp object to carefully poke the holes will work just as good. Some distress ink to darken the edges of your cutouts, and an applicator. I'm just using a makeup sponge from the dollar store. The distress ink is optional though, it's just for aesthetics. You will also need jump rings. I used ones sized 5mm and 3mm, but you don't need this exact size, it's whatever you prefer for the look of your project. I used one larger jump ring and 3 smaller jump rings for each dangle. You will need chain. In case you don't have any, you could also just loop multiple jump rings together to form a chain. You will need safety pins or bulb pins. I'm using safety pins. You will need some craft pliers like round nose pliers, cutting pliers to cut the chain, and needle nose pliers to help close the jump rings. If you could only choose one, you can make the round nose pliers work for everything, and I'll show you how to do that during the tutorial. Now that we have our supplies, we can start the project. As mentioned before, print out the digital download onto cardstock. Then go ahead and cut out the elements, but I actually recommend leaving these parts in their groups of 3 just so that they don't get mixed up while you're working. Like so. And we'll just cut them out as we go. But other than those, you have 8 tags and 2 little mini papers, and we're going to rip off bits of those to decorate the tags. We're going to start with a pumpkin spice latte dangle and pick a tag to go along with it. I chose this flat top tag with the florals on it. Cut out the grouped elements. And as a personal preference, I cut the pumpkin closer to the picture than the original border is. The pumpkin is the picture that we're going to glue onto the tag. Here you can take your distress ink and put it on the applicator to distress the edges of the tag, and on the back of it too, as well as the picture of the pumpkin spice latte, the word tag, and the pumpkin. And for the pumpkin, you don't need to distress the back. Next, choose one of the mini papers. I'm using the plain brown one. You're going to rip a random shape out of it, like so. And you can distress the edges if you'd like. And we're going to assemble it onto the tag like this with the pumpkin. So go ahead and get your scrap piece of paper and your glue stick. Put glue on the back and attach it to the tag. Now we're going to take our mini hole puncher, or like mentioned before, you can just use something sharp to very carefully poke the holes as needed. We're going to hole punch the tag, the latte, and the words. Now grab your jump rings, 1 larger one and 3 smaller ones, and a piece of chain to the length that you'd like it to be, the round nose pliers, and the safety pin. Use your cutting pliers to cut out the length of chain that you would like, or if you only have round nose pliers, you can put it in one of the links and pry it open. That will separate the chain for you without needing cutting pliers. Now that we have everything ready, we're going to take one of the 3 smaller jump rings, pry it open with the round nose pliers. You're going to loop another small jump ring onto it, and then loop the words onto it, and close the jump ring. Originally I was trying to use the round nose pliers to close the jump ring, but I was kind of struggling, so I switched to the needle nose pliers, which have a flatter surface area. It should turn out like this. Now set that aside and grab the last small jump ring, pry it open with the round nose pliers, then loop your piece of chain through it, and the pumpkin spice latte, and use the pliers to close the jump ring. It's going to turn out like this. Lastly, we're going to take our larger jump ring, pry it open with our pliers, then loop the tag through it, the other end of the chain, and the words using the small jump ring that's attached to the very end, and lastly the safety pin, and then close the large jump ring. And there you go, your pumpkin spice latte journal dangle is done. Now we're going to make the rest of the dangles with the exact same method. I'm going to go through them one by one in case anyone wanted their own project to end up looking just like the listing photos. So let's continue. For the warm apple cider dangle, I'm going to use the beige rounded top tag. Cut out the elements. I'm going to cut out the apple a little closer to the picture than the original border, then distress all the edges as previously shown. For the little ripped scrap of paper, I'm going to use the floral mini paper and distress its edges, and then use a glue stick to glue it onto the tag. Then hole punch here, here, and here. Then get your jump rings, one larger and 3 smaller, a piece of chain, I'm using a shorter one, and a safety pin. Just like before, we're going to pry open one of the smaller jump rings, loop your second small jump ring onto it and the words, then close the jump ring. Next, we're going to open our last small jump ring, loop the chain through it, and the apple cider picture, and close the jump ring. Lastly, pry open your larger jump ring, and loop the safety pin, tag, chain, and words through it, and close the jump ring. And that makes our cute little apple cider dangle. For the caramel toffee brew dangle, I'm going to use a floral tag with a rounded top and the plain brown mini paper. Cut everything out like previously shown, and distress their edges, including the little ripped piece of paper. Glue it and the little toffee pictures onto the tag, then hole punch here, here, and here, and get your jump rings and chain. I'm using a longer piece of chain for this one. Loop the elements all like previously shown, with the 2 small jump rings for the words, a small jump ring and the chain for the toffee brew cup, and lastly with a large jump ring, loop the safety pin, tag, chain, and words, and then close it to make the caramel toffee brew dangle. Next, for the hazelnut mocha dangle, I'm using the brown plaid tag and the floral mini paper. Cut out all the elements and distress their edges. Glue the ripped scrap and the hazelnuts onto the tag, then hole punch, and get your jump rings. I'm using a longer piece of chain on this one as well. Loop everything the same way as before. And finally loop all the elements onto the larger jump ring. To make the hazelnut mocha dangle. For the maple coffee dangle, I'm using a floral tag with a rounded top and the plain brown mini paper. Cut everything out and distress their edges. Glue the paper scrap and the coffee beans onto the tag, and hole punch. I'm using a shorter piece of chain for this one, then loop everything as shown before. To make the maple coffee dangle. For the warm spiced cocoa dangle, I'm going to use the brown plaid tag and the floral paper. Cut everything out and distress their edges. Glue the scrap and the chocolates onto the tag, and hole punch. I'm using a longer piece of chain for this one, and go ahead and loop everything onto the jump rings like before. To make the warm spiced cocoa dangle. For the spiced chai tea dangle, I'm going to use a floral tag with a flat top and the plain brown mini paper. Cut everything out and distress the edges. Glue the paper scrap and the spices onto the tag, and then hole punch. I'm using a longer piece of chain for this one, and loop everything as before. To make the spiced chai tea dangle. Last but not least, let's make the Cranberry Delight dangle. I'm using the beige round top tag and the floral mini paper. Cut everything out and distress their edges, then glue the paper scrap and the cranberries onto the tag, and hole punch. I'm using a short piece of chain for this one, and loop everything onto the jump rings like before. To make the Cranberry Delight dangle. And there you go. Now you have all of your cute little dangles themed about all sorts of yummy autumn coffees and teas. To attach it to your junk journal or scrapbook, just pierce the page and then close the safety pin again. If you'd rather not pierce your page, you can attach it by putting the safety pin through a paper clip. I'm using a mini one, but any paper clip will do. Then attach your paper clip to the page. Here's one last look at all of these sweet autumn dangles. Thank you so much for joining in on this fun craft with me. I hope the tutorial was easy to follow and that you enjoyed creating this project. If you'd like to follow me on social media for more junk journal ideas and projects, that information will be at the end of the video and also in the description. Happy junk journaling, and I hope you have a wonderful fall season.